world-class animation with an African twist. The 2021 Berlinale returns for a sequel and finding refuge and healing through art. That's all coming up in today's show. We're starting off in the French resort town of Annecy, though, which is currently hosting its 60th International Animated Film Festival. The event has been scaled down somewhat due to coronavirus restrictions, but the programme is as enticing as ever, with a special focus on African talent. Our reporters Ellen Gainsford and Eloise Moulin went to check it out.
The queues for screenings are socially distanced under the sunshine, but attendees are happy to return in person to the 60th edition of the Annecy International Animated Film Festival. This year, the spotlight is on African animation.
I think this festival is really well timed to celebrate African talent because, not just because of COVID, but because of the internet. The playing field has been flattening for a very long time. So some tools which could only be accessed by some people who are able to go to some place to study are now readily available by groups of people from all over the world.
The festival draws global talent to the picturesque town of Annecy in the southeast of France. From seasoned directors to emerging talents like Malian student Moise Togo, whose film $75,000 shows how animation can be used to explore difficult themes.
It's a film about albinism. There are false beliefs around this in Africa. I mixed live footage with 3D animation.
Showcasing the full spectrum of the industry, Annecy also presents the best in children's animation. Produced in the Ivory Coast, the series Kenda tackles educational topics, including the importance of free elections and protecting the environment.
We try to deal with really serious subjects, but adapt them for children. Make things easier so that children can absorb the basic idea. That way, when they grow up, they will have these values.
But while African animation is flourishing, it's not yet as well known as other, more established sectors.
It's not as present as European, American or Asian animation. I think that African animation is not known widely enough. And from what I've seen, it's worth exploring.
Disney has also spotted the potential on the continent and for the first time is collaborating with a Pan-African studio for the series Iwaju. Before this year's event, only 47 African films have been screened in the 60 years that Annecy Festival has existed. Organisers hope that this year marks a turning point.
Next, to one of the big three when it comes to film festivals here in Europe. The Berlinale ordinarily takes place in February, but like the Cannes Film Festival, it's been delayed by the pandemic and essentially split into two parts. In March, the official selection and prize winners were announced online, and now, in June, the movie-going public gets to play catch-up and judge those films for themselves. COVID-19 means the conditions are a bit different, with screenings taking place outside, for example. Our correspondents Nick Spicer and Anne Maillet went to get a piece of the action.
Evening wear and the red carpet for a real-world, not virtual, Golden Bear Awards ceremony.
Willkommen zum Berlinale Summer Special.
3 months after the online competition, the Berlin Film Festival is hosting a replay.
Das ist fantastisch, as they say in some German films.
A Berlinale for the movie-going public, free at last. With outdoor showings at 16 landmark venues in the capital and only 60,000 tickets available instead of the usual 330,000. To see a movie, you need to show a negative COVID test or proof that you're vaccinated. And there are still some safety measures, but nothing that's kept fans away.
Also ich freue mich ganz doll, dass das so stattfinden kann und fühle mich auch sicher, es ist alles draußen.
Und es ist besser, dass wir jetzt dort gleich einen französischen Film sehen dürfen, anstatt überhaupt nichts zu machen. Und dafür ziehen wir die Maske an und lassen uns testen.
It's also an opportunity for this young French filmmaker to meet the public. His movie, The World After Us, is his first, made with a small budget and storylines from his own life.
Être amoureux, ça reste jamais été un métier. C'est un métier? Non, c'est pas un métier.
The movie was chosen in the Panorama category and will hit French screens at the start of 2022 after a long pandemic pause.
La genèse du film fait que c'est même encore plus important pour nous. J'avoue que j'ai encore du mal à me dire déjà qu'on a fait un long métrage qui va sortir au cinéma et qui en plus est projeté à la Berlinale et j'avoue que c'est incroyable.
The Berlinale, open to the public, runs until June 20th. It's the first big cultural event in the German capital since the beginning of the pandemic.
Next to an artist who has used visual expression to come to terms with traumatic stints in prison. Naja Al-Bukai spent time in jail in Syria in 2012 and 2014. He's since sought refuge here in France. His drawings and engravings capture the horrors of that experience under the regime of Bashar al-Assad. They've now been put together in a book. Catherine Viette and René Lefort went to meet the artist.
We have the impression that he wanted to leap off the page, perhaps to free himself, to leave the prison completely. He's trying to escape from the paper.
Racked with pain, these tortured figures are still far from being freed. Naja Al-Bukai's drawings and engravings capture the horror of prisons under the regime of Bashar al-Assad. Al-Bukai was imprisoned twice.
After I took part in several demonstrations in Damascus and in the suburbs of the city, after the start of the Arab Spring in Damascus and the Arab world, I was denounced. I had criticized the government and the regime, called out the corruption and its mistreatment and violence against protesters.
Originally from Homs, the capital of the Syrian revolution, Al-Bukai says what happened still haunts him.
What struck me the most were the traces of blood on the walls. We had to stand and stare at the wall. I was hit for hours. I could barely see and look. Mostly it felt apocalyptic. Humiliating men, cramming them into claustrophobic spaces where it's too hard to breathe. And then the cries. That's what was most shocking, the cries of the people.
Al-Bukai says he was inspired by Otto Dix and his engravings of the First World War. He trained as an artist at the École des Beaux-Arts in Rouen in the 90s and is now preparing a new engraving inspired by a fellow inmate imprisoned for 40 years.
A former prisoner that I met in Adra. After spending 16 years in prison in Palmyra, he and the other prisoners were forced to make a sculpture of Assad's father, the dictator, in order to avoid torture or to get a little more food. The prisoners were in the process of carving the head of their tyrant.
Continuing to bear witness to these broken destinies, this political refugee supports the kind of freedom of expression first championed by French philosopher Voltaire.
I do not think I could add anything to Voltaire. I do not agree with you, but I would fight vigorously so that you can express your ideas. The worst stupidity is to be violent against those who want to express their ideas.
In the face of man's brutality, Al-Bukai's brushstrokes and his philosophy reclaim a little of our humanity.
Well, we'll wrap up the show with another exhibition here in Paris, one that takes us back to the first female painters who paved the way for women to adopt art as a career. The artists in question were working between 1780 and 1830, names which went down in history such as Elisabeth Vigée-Lebrun and Constance Meyer, as well as some lesser-known talents. This show explores how they fought for status and recognition, as well as showcasing some of those beautiful canvases. It's showing at the Musée de Luxembourg. Do take a look. Otherwise, you can get more arts and culture on our website. We're on social media too. There's more news coming up on France 24 just after this.